The river flowed fast and mercilessly, its dark waters swallowing everything in its path. Branches, leaves, and trash swirled in the current, disappearing beneath the surface. The wind howled, bending the reeds along the shore, as if nature itself was warning anyone who came too close. And then, movement. A German shepherd, her golden brown fur soaked and heavy, fought against the water. Her paws thrashed, her muscles straining, but something was dragging her down. A thick rope was tied around her neck, and at the end of it, a sack filled with stones. Her breaths came in sharp, panicked gasps, her eyes wide with terror. She wasn't just struggling to swim, she was fighting to live. On the riverbank, a woman named Clara walked by, her mind lost in thoughts of work and groceries. But then she heard it. Not a bark, not a whimper, but a desperate, choking sound. Her heart stopped. She turned toward the water, and her eyes locked with the dog's. For a second, neither moved. Then Clara dropped her bag and ran. The icy water hit her like 1,000 needles, but she didn't stop. She swam, her arms cutting through the waves until her fingers brushed against fur. The dog flinched, but Clara grabbed the rope, her stomach twisting when she realized someone had done this on purpose. "Hold on," she whispered through chattering teeth. With all her strength, she pulled the dog toward the shore, the weight of the stones fighting against her. The current tried to drag them both under, but Clara refused to let go. Finally, they collapsed onto the rocky bank, both trembling, both alive. Clara looked at the dog, weak, shivering, but still breathing. The rope had left deep marks on her neck. "Who did this to you?" Clara whispered, her voice shaking with anger. The dog's eyes met hers, exhausted but still burning with defiance. This wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Clara's hands shook as she fumbled with the knot around the dog's neck, her fingers numb from the freezing water. The rope was coarse, biting into her skin as she worked, but she didn't stop until it finally loosened and fell away. The dog, now free from the weight that had tried to drown her, collapsed onto the ground, her sides heaving with weak, uneven breaths. Clara quickly wrapped her own coat around the shivering animal, rubbing warmth back into her soaked fur. The dog's eyes flickered open, dark and exhausted, but there was something in them, a spark of recognition, of trust. "You're okay now," Clara whispered, though she wasn't sure if that was true. The dog was alive, but barely. Her ribs pressed sharply against her skin, her breathing ragged. She had been starved before someone decided to throw her away like garbage. Clara knew she had to act fast. She scooped the dog into her arms, surprised by how light she felt despite her size, and ran toward her car. The dog didn't struggle, too weak to resist, but her eyes stayed locked on Clara's face, as if memorizing it. The drive to the nearest animal clinic was a blur. Clara kept one hand on the wheel and the other on the dog's chest, feeling the faint but steady heartbeat beneath her palm. "Stay with me," she murmured, her voice breaking. The dog let out a soft whine, as if answering. When they arrived, the vet, Dr. Richter, took one look at the German shepherd and immediately called for help. The dog was rushed to the back, hooked up to IV fluids, and wrapped in heated blankets. Clara waited in the hallway, her clothes still damp, her mind racing. Who would do this? Why tie a dog to a sack of rocks and throw her into a river? It wasn't just cruelty, it was calculated, cold. Dr. Richter emerged an hour later, his expression grim but not hopeless. "She's stable," he said, "but it's bad. Dehydration, hypothermia, old scars on her back. Looks like she was beaten." He paused, studying Clara. "You saved her life, but I need to ask, do you know anything about her?" Clara shook her head. "I just found her in the river. Someone tried to kill her. The vet's jaw tightened. Then she's lucky you were there. Clara hesitated before asking the question burning in her chest. Will she make it? Dr. Richter sighed. If she survives the night, her chances improve. But she's been through hell. Even if she recovers physically, the mental scars... He didn't finish the sentence. Clara stepped into the recovery room. The dog, now clean, her fur fluffed from the warm air, lay on a thick blanket, her sides rising and falling slowly. Her eyes were half-lidded, but when Clara approached, they flicked open, alert. Clara crouched beside her, gently stroking her head. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" she murmured. The dog's tail gave the faintest twitch. Then Clara noticed something. A small, faded tattoo inside the dog's ear. A series of numbers. A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't just a stray. Someone had owned her. Someone had marked her. And someone had wanted her dead. The numbers tattooed inside the dog's ear stood out starkly against her pale skin. The ink faded, but still legible. K9742. Clara traced the digits with her finger, her stomach twisting. This wasn't some amateur backyard breeder's mark. It was professional, military, or police. She'd seen similar tattoos on working dogs before, but never on one left to die like trash. The German shepherd watched her with tired eyes, her breathing steadier now, but her body still weak from the river's cruelty. Dr. Richter returned with a clipboard, his eyebrows lifting when Clara showed him the tattoo. "That's not a shelter ID," he muttered, rubbing his chin. "This dog was trained. Probably expensive, too. Why would anyone dump her like this?" Clara had no answers, only a growing knot of anger in her chest. She stayed at the clinic all night, dozing in a chair beside the dog's recovery cage, waking every time the animal stirred. By morning, the shepherd could stand on wobbly legs, her strength returning in small bursts. She drank water eagerly, lapping at the bowl until it was empty, then looked up at Clara as if asking for more. "You're hungry, huh?" Clara murmured, scratching behind the dog's ears. The way the animal leaned into her touch, desperate for affection but still hesitant as if expecting a blow, made Clara's throat tighten. Dr. Richter cleared his throat from the doorway. "She's doing better than expected. But I need to ask, what happens now? She can't stay here forever." Clara hadn't thought that far ahead. Her apartment was tiny, her work schedule chaotic. She wasn't prepared for a dog, especially not one with scars, both seen and unseen. But when she looked down at the shepherd, now sitting upright, her ears pricked forward with cautious hope, something inside her shifted. "I'll take her," she heard herself say, "just until we figure out where she came from." The vet nodded, relief flashing across his face. "Good, because I checked that tattoo. Called a buddy who trains police dogs. That number? It's from a canine unit disbanded 2 years ago after a corruption scandal. Dogs were supposed to be reassigned or retired, but a few went missing. If this is one of them..." He trailed off, letting the unspoken implication hang in the air. Someone had taken her. Someone who didn't want her found. Clara's fingers stilled on the dog's fur. The shepherd sensed the tension, letting out a low whine. "It's okay," Clara lied, forcing a smile. But her mind raced. If this dog was stolen police property, that changed everything. Whoever tried to kill her wasn't just cruel. They were covering their tracks. That afternoon, Clara loaded the dog, now temporarily named River, after where she was found, into her car with a borrowed leash and a bag of supplies from the clinic. River hesitated at the car door, her muscles tense, until Clara gently guided her inside. The drive home was quiet. River pressed against the passenger seat, her nose twitching at every unfamiliar scent outside the window. Clara kept one hand on the wheel and the other on River's back, feeling the rise and fall of her breathing. But when they pulled into Clara's apartment complex, River suddenly went rigid. Her ears flattened, her body trembling not from cold but from recognition. Clara followed her gaze to a black SUV parked near the building. A man in a leather jacket leaned against it, smoking. He wasn't looking their way, but River's reaction was instant. A growl built in her throat, so low Clara felt it more than heard it. Then, without warning, River lunged across the seat, barking furiously at the windshield, her teeth bared. Clara grabbed her collar in shock. "River!" "What?" The man at the SUV turned. His eyes locked onto the car, onto the dog, and then he dropped his cigarette and reached for his phone. Clara's blood ran cold. River knew him, and he knew River. Clara's hands clenched around the steering wheel as the man in the leather jacket stared directly at her car, his face twisting in recognition the moment River's barking erupted through the quiet parking lot. The dog was frantic now, her paws scrambling against the dashboard, her entire body trembling with a mix of fear and aggression that Clara had never seen before. It wasn't just alarm, it was memory. River knew this man, and whatever history they had, it was bad. Without thinking, Clara threw the car into reverse and peeled out of the parking spot, the tires screeching against the pavement. In the rearview mirror, she saw the man sprint toward his SUV, his phone still pressed to his ear. He was calling someone. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she sped through the streets, taking sharp turns to lose any possible tail. River had stopped barking but now panted heavily, her eyes darting between Clara and the back window, her muscles coiled tight. "It's okay," Clara murmured, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring the dog or herself. She couldn't go home, not now. Whoever that man was, he knew where she lived. She needed somewhere safe, somewhere unexpected. Her mind raced through options before landing on one. Her brother's old cabin, tucked away in the woods outside the city. He'd offered it to her months ago when she needed a break from work, and right now it was the only place she could think of where they wouldn't be found. The drive took an hour, the roads growing narrower and quieter the farther they got from town. River finally settled, her head resting on the seat, but her ears stayed alert, twitching at every sound. When they arrived, the cabin was just as Clara remembered, small, dusty, but sturdy. She carried River inside, the dog still weak but able to walk, her nose working overtime to take in the unfamiliar scents. Clara locked the door behind them, then immediately checked the windows, her nerves still on edge. She pulled out her phone, hesitating before dialing Doctor. Richter. He picked up on the second ring. "Clara, is everything okay?" "No," she said, her voice low. Someone recognized River. "A man. He saw us, and he knew her. I had to leave. I'm at a safe place for now, but—" She trailed off, unsure how much to say over the phone. Dr. Richter was silent for a long moment. Then, carefully, he said, "You need to be careful. If that dog really is from the disbanded K-9 unit, there are people who wouldn't want her found. Corrupt cops, criminals who used to work with them. It's not just some random act of cruelty. This is bigger." Clara exhaled sharply, running a hand through her hair. "What do I do?" "Stay hidden. And if you can, find out more about that tattoo. There might be records, someone who knows which dog that number belongs to. But Clara—" His voice dropped. "Don't trust anyone, not until you know who's after her." She hung up, her mind spinning. River sat at her feet, staring up at her with those dark, knowing eyes. Clara crouched, running her fingers through the dog's fur. "Who are you, huh?" she whispered, And why does someone want you dead? River leaned into her touch, but her body stayed tense, her ears pricked for danger even in the quiet of the cabin. That night, Clara barely slept. Every creak of the old wood, every rustle of leaves outside made her pulse jump. River stayed close, her head resting on Clara's lap, her presence oddly comforting despite the fear hanging over them. At dawn, Clara finally dozed off, only to wake to the sound of River growling. She bolted upright. The dog was at the window, her teeth bared, her hackles raised. Clara crept forward, peering through the glass. A figure moved through the trees, and they were getting closer. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she watched the shadowy figure move between the trees, their steps deliberate, pausing every few feet as if listening. River's growl deepened into a vibration Clara could feel through the floorboards. The dog's body coiled like a spring ready to unleash. Moonlight glinted off something metallic in the figure's hand. A gun? A knife? Clara's pulse roared in her ears as she grabbed River's collar, pulling her back from the window. "Quiet," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The dog obeyed but didn't relax, her muscles taut, her stare locked on the threat outside. The figure stopped just beyond the tree line, head tilting toward the cabin. Clara's mind raced. Had they been followed? Was it the man from the parking lot, or someone worse? She glanced at the back door, then at River. They couldn't stay here if that person got inside. A twig snapped outside, too close. Clara acted on instinct. She snatched her car keys from the table and grabbed River's makeshift leash, urging the dog toward the back door. The cabin had no real weapons, no security, just old furniture and the element of surprise. She cracked the door open, the cold night air biting her skin, and listened. Silence. Then, footsteps, circling the property. River lunged forward the second they stepped outside, her nose working frantically, leading Clara not toward the woods but along the side of the cabin, into the tall grass. Clara followed, her heart hammering, trusting the dog's instincts over her own. They crouched behind an overgrown bush as the footsteps grew louder, closer. Clara's fingers dug into River's fur, both to steady herself and to keep the dog from bolting. Then a voice. "I know you're here." Male, rough, familiar. It was the man from the parking lot. Clara's blood turned to ice. How had he found them? She hadn't told anyone where she was going, not even Dr. Richter. Unless... her phone. She'd used it to call the vet. Could it have been tracked? The man stepped into view, his leather jacket reflecting the moonlight. He held a pistol loosely at his side, his other hand gripping a flashlight. "You shouldn't have taken the dog," he called, sweeping the beam across the trees. "She doesn't belong to you." River's growl intensified, but Clara held her tight. If they ran now, he'd hear them. If they stayed, he'd find them. Her eyes darted to the car, parked 20 feet away, too far to reach without being seen. Then, a miracle. A distant howl echoed through the woods. A coyote, maybe a wolf. The man's head snapped toward the sound, his grip tightening on the gun. In that split second of distraction, Clara made her move. She tugged River's leash and sprinted for the car, her socks slipping on the damp grass. River kept pace beside her, silent now, focused. The man whirled at the noise, his flashlight beam catching Clara's back just as she yanked the car door open. "Stop!" he barked, raising the gun. Clara didn't look back. She shoved River inside, dove into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared to life as a gunshot cracked through the night. The rear window shattered. Glass rained down, but Clara was already reversing, then spinning the wheel to tear down the dirt road. Another shot rang out, hitting the trunk with a metallic thunk. River panted in the passenger seat, her eyes wild but alert. Clara's hands shook on the wheel as she sped toward the highway, her mind racing. They were alive, but for how long? That man knew her face. Her car. And now he knew she wouldn't give up the dog without a fight. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number. She answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "Who is this?" A pause. Then a different voice, calm, calculated. "You have something that belongs to us, Miss Varga, and we always get what's ours." The line went dead. Clara's stomach dropped. They knew her name. This wasn't just about River anymore. It was about survival. The phone slipped from Clara's fingers, clattering onto the car floor as the reality of the threat sank in. They knew her name, they knew where she lived, and now they knew she had River. The dog whined softly, nudging Clara's arm with her nose, her dark eyes filled with a mix of concern and urgency. Clara calls. One cryptic conversation later, and Clara had coordinates, not an address. That was good. No paper trail. The drive took 5 hours, the roads growing narrower and rougher the farther they got from civilization. River slept fitfully, her paws twitching as if dreaming of chase scenes and gunfire. Clara kept checking the mirrors, her paranoia spiking at every passing car, but no one followed. By the time the GPS announced they'd arrived, the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across a dirt path barely wide enough for the car. The cabin was smaller than she expected, tucked between towering pines, its wooden walls weathered but sturdy. Mara stood on the porch, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She hadn't changed much, same sharp green eyes, same distrustful stance. But when her gaze landed on River, something softened. "You didn't say you were bringing a dog," she said by way of greeting. Clara exhaled, the weight of the last 24 hours crashing over her. Long story. Mara studied her for a beat, then nodded toward the door. "Come on in. You look like hell." The cabin was cozy, lit by lanterns, the air thick with the scent of herbs and wood smoke. Clara collapsed onto a worn couch, River immediately pressing against her legs, her nose working overtime to take in the new scents. Mara handed Clara a steaming mug of something bitter and herbal, probably homemade, before sitting across from her. "Start talking." Clara did. She spilled everything. The river, the tattoo, Daniels, the shooting. Mara listened without interruption, her face growing grimmer with each revelation. When Clara finished, Mara leaned back, her fingers drumming against her knee. "So, you're telling me you accidentally adopted a police dog that's basically a walking, barking witness to a murder cover-up?" Clara winced. "When you say it like that, it sounds insane." Mara sighed, rubbing her temples. "But I believe you, which is why you can't stay here long." Clara's stomach dropped. "What?" Mara stood, pacing to the window. "I have a contact, someone who can help, but it's risky." She turned back to Clara, her expression grim. "There's a journalist, Nina Torres. She's been investigating the disbanded K9 unit for months. If anyone can get this story out safely, it's her." Clara's pulse quickened. A journalist meant exposure. It meant safety and publicity, but it also meant painting a target on Nina's back. "Is that smart?" "Smart? No." Mara smirked. "But it's your only play, otherwise you're just waiting for them to find you." Clara looked down at River, who stared back with unwavering loyalty. This dog had fought to survive. Clara owed it to her to finish the fight. "How do we contact Nina?" Mara grabbed a burner phone from a drawer and tossed it to Clara. "Already did. She's meeting you tomorrow. Midnight. Abandoned ranger station 10 miles from here." She hesitated, then added, "Don't be late." and don't trust anyone else." Clara nodded, pocketing the phone. But as she turned to thank Mara, she caught a flicker of movement outside the window, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. River saw it too. Her growl was barely audible, but Clara felt it in her bones. Mara followed their gaze, her face paling. "You were followed." Clara's blood ran cold. Number, "We weren't. I made sure." Mara's hands clenched into fists. Then someone tipped them off. The unspoken accusation hung in the air. Clara's breath caught. Had Mara just set them up? Outside, branches snapped. Too close, too many. River bared her teeth, her body coiled to strike. Clara had seconds to decide, fight or run. And this time, running wasn't an option. Clara's muscles locked as the crunch of boots on gravel circled the cabin. Too many to count, too organized to be random. River's growl vibrated against her leg, the dog's entire body tense as a coiled spring. Mara hadn't moved, her face frozen in something between guilt and fear, her hands half raised as if to say, "I didn't know." But Clara couldn't afford to believe her. Not now. The lantern light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls as Clara's mind raced. They were trapped. Front door, back door, windows, no way out. Then, a metallic click from outside. A voice, muffled but clear enough. "Breach on 3." Clara acted on pure instinct. She grabbed Mara's arm and yanked her to the floor just as the front window exploded inward, glass shattering like ice. Gunfire erupted, bullets chewing into the walls where Mara's head had been seconds before. River lunged forward with a snarl, but Clara seized her collar, dragging her down. "Stay!" she hissed. The dog obeyed, though her muscles trembled with the need to attack. Mara's breath came in ragged gasps. "I didn't." "Shut up and move." Clara crawled toward the back hallway, River at her heels, Mara scrambling behind. Another volley of gunfire tore through the cabin, splintering the kitchen table. They had seconds before the assault team regrouped. Clara's fingers closed around the handle of a broom propped against the wall. Pitiful weapon, but better than nothing. The back door burst open before they reached it. A figure clad in black tactical gear filled the doorway, rifle raised. Clara swung the broom like a bat. The wooden handle connected with the man's knee with a sickening crack. He howled, stumbling back, and River was on him in a flash, her teeth sinking into his forearm. The rifle clattered to the floor. Clara didn't hesitate. She snatched it up, her fingers finding the trigger by muscle memory. Her father had taught her to shoot years ago. She'd hated it then. Now, she was grateful. "Clara, wait." Mara's cry cut off as Clara spun, leveling the rifle at her instead of the downed operative. "Tell me the truth," Clara snarled. "Did you call them?" Mara's eyes widened. "No, but I know who did. Your vet. Richter. He's dirty. He had to report the tattoo when you called him." The words hit Clara like a punch. Dr. Richter, the man who'd saved River's life? It made terrible sense. He'd accessed K9 records, known about the disbanded unit, and she'd trusted him. A shout from outside. More boots. No time. Clara made a split-second decision. She tossed the rifle to Mara. "Cover us." Then she grabbed a River's collar and bolted for the woods behind the cabin, the dog keeping pace effortlessly. Branches whipped at Clara's face as they crashed through the underbrush, the shouts of their pursuers fading slightly behind them. They needed distance. A plan. River suddenly veered left, tugging Clara off the path. Clara resisted at first, then saw why. A shallow creek cut through the trees ahead, its burbling water perfect for masking their trail. They splashed in, the icy water numbing Clara's ankles, and followed the current downstream. 5 minutes. 10. The forest thickened, the sounds of pursuit fading. Finally, Clara risked stopping behind a massive oak, her lungs burning. River pressed close, her ears swiveling for danger. Clara fumbled for the burner phone Mara had given her, still in her pocket, miraculously dry. 1 bar of signal, enough. She dialed the only number she could think of. Nina Torres answered on the second ring. "You're early." Clara choked out a laugh. "Change of plans, we're blown." A pause, then crisp and professional. "Ranger station's compromised." New meet point, the old mill on Blackwater Road. 2 hours, and Clara. "Yeah? Don't trust anyone, not even me. Verify everything." The line went dead. Clara slumped against the tree, her adrenaline ebbing. River licked her hand, a silent question in her eyes. "Yeah," Clara murmured. "We'll make it." But as she pushed upright, a twig snapped behind them. Clara whirled, just as a syringe plunged into River's neck. The dog yelped, collapsing instantly. A figure stepped from the shadows, his face obscured by a ski mask. "Sorry, Miss Varga," he said, his voice eerily calm, "but the dog dies tonight." And then the world went black as something hard connected with Clara's temple. The first thing Clara registered was the smell, damp concrete, motor oil, and something metallic that made her stomach turn. Blood, maybe hers, maybe River's. Her head throbbed where the blow had landed, a sharp, insistent pain that pulsed with every heartbeat. She tried to move, but her wrists were bound behind her back with something rough and unyielding. Zip ties, probably. Her ankles were secured too, the plastic digging into her skin. She blinked against the dim light, her vision swimming as she took in her surroundings. A warehouse, or maybe a garage. High ceilings, rusted metal beams, and a single flickering fluorescent light that cast long, eerie shadows. And then she saw River. The German shepherd lay motionless on the concrete a few feet away, her sides rising and falling in slow, shallow breaths. The sedative must have been strong, but at least she was alive. For now. Clara's throat tightened. She had to get them out of here. A door creaked open across the room, and footsteps echoed against the concrete. Clara forced her body to go limp, her eyes half-lidded, feigning unconsciousness. 2 figures approached, one tall and broad-shouldered, the other leaner with a familiar gait. The taller man nudged Clara's side with his boot, and she barely suppressed a flinch. "Still out?" the leaner one asked. Clara recognized that voice. Dr. Richter. Her stomach twisted with betrayal. "Doesn't matter," the tall man grunted. "Boss wants it done before midnight, no loose ends." Richter sighed. "You don't have to enjoy it so much. You got soft, Doc, that's your problem." Richter didn't answer. Instead, he crouched beside River, checking her pulse with clinical detachment. Clara watched through her lashes as his fingers lingered on the dog's neck, right over the tattoo. His expression was unreadable. The tall man pulled out a phone, snapping a photo of River. "Proof for the boss. Then we dump them both in the river. Make it look like an accident." Clara's blood ran cold. They were going to stage it, her and River drowned together. No one would question it. No one would look deeper. Richter stood, wiping his hands on his pants. Give her another hour to wake up. I want her to know what's coming. The tall man smirked. Cruel. Practical, Richter corrected. But there was something in his tone. Hesitation? Regret? The 2 men walked away, their voices fading as they exited through the same door. Clara waited until the sound of their footsteps disappeared entirely before she dared to move. She tested the zip ties again, wincing as the plastic bit into her skin. No give, she needed something sharp. Her eyes darted around the room. Tools? Broken glass? nothing within reach. Then she noticed it, a jagged piece of metal sticking out from the leg of an old workbench a few feet away. If she could get to it. Clara rolled onto her side, biting back a groan as pain shot through her ribs. She inched forward, her bound legs making movement awkward and slow. Every sound, her own breathing, the distant hum of machinery, felt amplified, like the walls were listening. Halfway there, River stirred. A low whine escaped the dog's throat, her legs twitching as the sedative wore off. Clara froze, her heart hammering. If River woke up fully and made noise, their captors would return. But if she stayed unconscious, Clara couldn't count on her help. "Easy, girl," Clara whispered, barely audible. River's ears twitched at the sound of her voice. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing glassy, disoriented eyes. She blinked slowly, then focused on Clara. Recognition flashed in her gaze, followed by confusion, then alarm as she realized they were trapped. Clara shook her head minutely, a silent plea for quiet. River understood. The dog's breathing steadied, her body tensing as she fought off the last of the sedative's effects. She was weak, but alert, and she was watching Clara with fierce determination. Clara resumed her crawl toward the workbench, her fingers stretching for the metal edge. Just a little farther. Her fingertips brushed the jagged edge. Yes. She hooked the zip tie against it, sawing back and forth as quietly as possible. The plastic frayed, then snapped. Her hands were free. Clara didn't waste a second. She reached down, tearing at the ties around her ankles. The moment they gave way, she scrambled to River's side, checking her for injuries. The dog was shaky but unharmed. No blood, no broken bones. Just groggy. "We're getting out of here," Clara murmured, running her hands over River's collar. No leash, no tags, nothing to grab onto. A sound from outside the door, voices returning. Clara's pulse spiked. She had seconds to decide. She grabbed the broken piece of metal, gripping it like a weapon. The door swung open. The tall man stepped inside first, his back to her as he laughed at something Richter said. Clara lunged. The metal caught him across the back of the neck, and he roared in pain, whirling on her. His fist connected with her jaw, sending her sprawling. River snarled, launching herself at him despite her unsteady legs. Her teeth sank into his arm, and he shouted, shaking her off. Richter stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes wide. Clara met his gaze. "Help us," she gasped. For a heartbeat, Richter didn't move. Then he stepped aside. Clara didn't hesitate. She grabbed River's collar and bolted past him, out the door and into a maze of dimly lit corridors. Behind her, the tall man's shouts echoed, followed by the sound of a struggle. Richter buying them time. She didn't know. She didn't stop. They burst through an emergency exit into the cool night air. A parking lot stretched ahead, empty except for a single van, Richter's, and beyond that, woods. Clara ran for the trees, River at her side. They weren't safe yet, but they were alive. And Clara had one last card to play. She pulled out the burner phone, dialing Nina Torres with shaking fingers. "Change of plans," she panted. "I've got proof." The woods swallowed Clara and River whole, the trees pressing in like silent witnesses as they stumbled through the underbrush. Clara's lungs burned, her legs threatening to give out, but she didn't dare stop. Behind them, shouts echoed, their pursuers fanning out, flashlights cutting through the darkness like knives. River moved stiffly beside her, the sedative still dulling her reflexes, but her instincts were sharp. She nudged Clara's hand with her nose, urging her toward a dense thicket of brambles. A hiding place. Clara dropped to her knees, crawling into the tangle of thorns, River squeezing in beside her. The brambles tore at her clothes and skin, but she barely felt it. She pressed a hand to River's side, feeling the rapid flutter of the dog's heartbeat. "Good girl," she breathed. "Just a little longer." The footsteps grew closer. A flashlight beam swept over their hiding spot, lingering for a heart-stopping second before moving on. Clara held her breath until the voices faded into the distance. She pulled out the burner phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed Nina Torres again. The journalist answered on the first ring. "Clara, where are you?" "Still alive," Clara whispered, "but not for long if we don't move fast. I know who's behind this." A pause, then Nina's voice, low and urgent. "Tell me." Clara glanced at River, the dog's dark eyes reflecting the dim moonlight. "Dr. Richter. He's part of it. He set us up, but he let us go. I don't know why." Nina exhaled sharply. "Because he's scared. The K-9 unit scandal runs deeper than we thought. There's a name, Lieutenant Cole. He's the one who gave the order to eliminate the dogs. Richter must have been his inside man at the clinic." Clara's stomach twisted. Richter had seemed so kind when he saved River. Had that all been an act? Or was there still a shred of decency in him? Nina continued, "I've been digging. Cole's dirty, drug trafficking, evidence tampering, the works. Those dogs were witnesses to an execution he carried out. But here's the thing. He didn't act alone. There's someone higher up pulling strings." Clara's mind raced. "Who?" "I don't know yet. But I have a source meeting me tonight with files, proof that could bring the whole thing down. You need to get to the mill, Clara. Now." Clara hesitated. "What if it's another trap?" "Then we're both screwed," Nina said bluntly. "But it's the only play we've got." The line went dead. Clara pocketed the phone, her hands steadying as she weighed their options. Run deeper into the woods and hope to outlast their hunters, or risk everything on Nina's lead. River whined softly. Her ears pricked toward the distant sound of engines, cars, maybe ATVs. Their pursuers weren't giving up. Clara made her decision. "We're going to the mill," she murmured to River. "But first we need a distraction." Her gaze landed on a rusted piece of rebar, half buried in the dirt. She grabbed it, then fished out the lighter she'd taken from Mara's cabin. It wouldn't be much, but a plan formed. 10 minutes later, flames licked at the dry underbrush near the warehouse they'd escaped from. The fire was small, controlled, but the smoke would draw attention. Clara and River watched from a distance as figures scrambled toward the blaze, shouting orders. Then they ran. The old mill was 5 miles east, a crumbling relic on the edge of Blackwater Creek. Clara moved like a ghost through the trees, River a silent shadow at her side. Every rustle of leaves, every distant engine sent her pulse skyrocketing, but they didn't stop. When the mill finally came into view, a skeletal silhouette against the moonlit sky, Clara slowed, her instincts screaming. Too quiet, no cars, no sign of Nina. River growled, low and warning. Clara's hand tightened on the rebar. "I know, girl." They approached from the rear, slipping through a broken window into the mill's musty interior. The air smelled of rotting wood and damp metal. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the walls, painting. The floor in jagged stripes. A voice cut through the darkness. "Clara? Nina." Clara stepped forward, squinting. Nina stood near the far wall, her face pale in the dim light. A file folder lay at her feet. "You got my message," Nina said. Clara didn't lower her weapon. "Where's your source?" Nina's expression flickered. "He didn't show, but he sent this." She nudged the folder with her foot. "It's all here, names, dates, proof that Cole was working for someone in the DA's office." Clara took a step closer, River tense beside her. "Why didn't you bring it to the police?" "Because I don't know who to trust," Nina said sharply, "and neither do you." A creak from above. Clara's head snapped up just as a figure dropped from the rafters, landing between her and Nina. Richter. Blood streaked his face, his clothes torn. He held up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." River snarled, lunging forward, but Clara caught her collar. "Wait." Richter's gaze darted to Nina, then back to Clara. "They're coming. Cole knows you're here. You have to go." Nina stiffened. "What the hell is this?" Richter ignored her, his eyes locked on Clara. "I didn't know, okay? Not at first. Cole threatened my family. I had no choice." Clara's grip on the rebar didn't waver. "You tried to kill River." "I saved her life first," Richter shot back. "And I just bought you time by taking out 2 of Cole's men. You want revenge? Fine. But take the damn files and run." A distant engine roared to life. Nina scooped up the folder, shoving it into Clara's hands. "He's right. We need to move." Clara hesitated, torn between fury and the desperate need to survive. Richter met her gaze, his own filled with something like regret. Then River barked, a sharp, urgent sound. Headlights swept across the mill's exterior. No more time. Clara turned and ran, Nina at her heels, Richter covering their retreat. The files burned in her hands. The truth was close, and Cole would kill to keep it buried. The night swallowed Clara, Nina, and River as they fled the mill, their footsteps muffled by the thick undergrowth. Behind them, the roar of engines grew louder. Cole's men were closing in. Clara clutched the file folder against her chest like a shield, the edges digging into her skin. Inside were names, dates, proof of corruption that went all the way to the top. But none of it mattered if they didn't survive the next hour. Nina led the way, her movements sharp and precise, cutting through the woods with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. River stayed close to Clara, her body a warm, steady presence, despite the lingering effects of the sedative. Every few steps, the dog would glance back, her ears twitching at sounds Clara couldn't hear. "We need to split up," Nina hissed suddenly, skidding to a stop behind a massive oak. "They'll track us easier if we stay together." Clara shook her head. "We're not separating." Nina's jaw tightened. "Then we're all dead. Look." She grabbed Clara's arm, yanking her down as a spotlight swept through the trees, illuminating the forest in stark white light. The beam passed inches above their heads. So close, Clara could smell the gasoline fumes from the ATV it was mounted on. Nina's breath was hot against Clara's ear. "They have dogs, real ones. Not like River, tracking hounds. We can't outrun them." Clara's stomach dropped. She looked at River, whose hackles were raised, her nostrils flaring as she scented the air. The German shepherd might be weakened, but she was still a trained canine. And she knew what was coming. A bark echoed in the distance, then another. Clara's blood turned to ice. Nina was right. They were out of time. Clara made a decision. She shoved the folder into Nina's hands. "Take this. Get it to someone who can use it. A reporter, a cop. Hell, the FBI, if you have to." Nina's eyes widened. "What about you?" Clara glanced at River. "We'll lead them away." For a second, Nina looked like she'd argue. Then she nodded, tucking the folder inside her jacket. "Where do we meet?" Clara forced a grim smile. "If we make it out alive, you'll know." Without another word, Nina melted into the shadows, her footsteps fading into the night. Clara turned to River, her heart pounding. "Ready, girl?" River's tail gave a single, determined wag. Clara took a deep breath, then bolted in the opposite direction, crashing through the underbrush with deliberate noise. Behind her, the barking intensified. The spotlight swung toward them. Good, let them follow. She and River wove through the trees, dodging low branches and leaping over fallen logs. The ATV engines revved, the sound closing in. Clara's lungs burned, her legs screaming in protest. But she didn't slow down. Then, the trees thinned. A cliff loomed ahead, the ground dropping away into darkness. Clara skidded to a stop at the edge, peering over. A river churned below, its black waters glinting in the moonlight. No way out. River pressed against her side, her body trembling but resolute. Clara knelt, wrapping her arms around the dog. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The barking was deafening now. The ATVs screeched to a halt just beyond the tree line. Clara closed her eyes. A gunshot rang out, but the pain never came. Instead, a voice shouted, "Down, now!" Clara dropped instinctively, dragging River with her. Gunfire erupted, but not aimed at them. From the shadows of the trees, figures in tactical gear advanced, their rifles trained on Cole's men. The ATV lights illuminated their insignia, FBI. Clara's breath caught. Had Nina gotten through to them? A hand grabbed her shoulder, yanking her behind a boulder. Clara whirled, fist raised, and froze. Richter. His face was bloody, his breathing ragged, but his grip was firm. "Don't move," he hissed. "They're not here for you." Clara stared at him. "What?" Richter's gaze darted toward the firefight. "Cole's been under investigation for months. The FBI was waiting for him to slip up. Tonight, he did." Clara's mind reeled. "You knew?" Richter's expression was unreadable. "I made a deal." Another volley of gunfire, shouts, the screech of tires as Cole's men tried to retreat. River growled, her focus locked on Richter. Clara tightened her hold on the dog's collar. "What happens now?" Richter exhaled sharply. "Now, you disappear. For good." He reached into his jacket. Clara flinched, but he pulled out a set of car keys. "Take my truck. It's parked half a mile east. Go somewhere. They'll never find you." Clara hesitated. "Why are you helping us?" Richter's gaze flickered to River. "Because she deserved better, and so do you." A shout cut through the chaos. "Cole's down! Repeat, Cole is down!" Richter shoved the keys into Clara's hand. "Go, now." Clara didn't need to be told twice. She and River ran, leaving the gunfire and the shouting behind. The keys burned in her palm, a lifeline she hadn't expected. But as they vanished into the night, one question haunted her. Was this freedom, or just another kind of trap? The first light of morning painted the sky in soft hues of pink and gold as Clara pulled Richter's truck onto a quiet, tree-lined road far from the chaos of the night. River sat in the passenger seat, her head resting on Clara's thigh, her breathing steady and calm. The dog's wounds had been cleaned and bandaged with the first aid kit Richter had stashed under the seat, and though she was still weak, her eyes were bright with life. Clara ran a hand over River's head, her fingers tracing the familiar contours of the dog's ears, the tattoo now hidden beneath a layer of gauze. They were free, but freedom came with a cost. Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket. A single text from Nina. "It's done. Cole's arrest is all over the news. The files are safe. No mention of Richter. No mention of Clara or River. That was for the best." Clara exhaled slowly, her grip on the steering wheel loosening. The road ahead stretched endlessly, winding through rolling hills and sleepy towns, places where no one would recognize them. Places where they could start over. She glanced at River. "Where should we go, girl?" River lifted her head, her tail thumping against the seat. Clara smiled. It didn't matter where they went, as long as they were together. She turned the radio on, letting the soft hum of music fill the cab. The news would come on soon, reports of corruption, arrests, a scandal that would rock the city. But for now there was only the road, the dog beside her, and the quiet certainty that they'd survived. River leaned into her touch, her trust unwavering. Clara's chest tightened. This dog had been thrown away like trash, left to drown in a river, but she'd fought, she'd survived, and in doing so she'd given Clara something she hadn't realized she'd lost: hope. The sun rose higher, chasing away the last shadows of the night. Clara drove on. Moral lesson: no creature is ever truly broken. Even in the darkest moments, there is strength to be found. Not just in ourselves, but in the bonds we form with those who refuse to give up on us. Kindness is never wasted, and sometimes saving someone else is the very thing that saves us too.